Get started. I'm going to call this special meeting of the Coralville City Council to order on June 9th, 2022. Could I get a roll call, please?
Knutson.
Here.
Gross. Here. Foster.
Here.
Hi. Hunt.
Resin. Goodrich.
Good.
I'm here.
Okay. All council members are present, as is the mayor, the city clerk, the city administrator, and other staff in the audience. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
So move.
Moved by Nguyen, seconded by? Seconded by Knutson. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, fantastic. The agenda is approved. So, first and foremost, I want to thank you all for being here this evening for our interviews to fill the vacant city council seat. Before we get started, I just want to give you a really quick rundown of how the process is going to work this evening. So this is going to be a little bit of a different process than what we typically see at a regular candidate forum. We have 7 candidates who have applied for the vacant city council position. There are copies of each candidate's application here at City Hall. There are also copies of each candidate's application available online as well. If you go to the Agenda Center on our website, you'll find those in the agenda packet. So if you're watching at home, you can take a look at those applications and resumes there. So each applicant is going to be interviewed by myself and the other members of the council. Each candidate is going to have 15 minutes for their interview, and we do have the schedule of the interviews that's available on our regular meeting agenda. Council members have reviewed each of the applicants. We've reviewed these applications individually, and we are going to, as I said, we're going to each ask 2 questions of the applicants. I am going to rotate the order so that we all have a turn going first. In addition, if there are any audience members that have a question, there are index cards over at the door there, an index card and a pen. You can write your question down and give the question to our assistant city administrator, Ellen Hobble, and she will bring that to me so that we can get your question out there. I will say that because we have a limited amount of time, I cannot guarantee that everyone's question will be asked. But we did want to give the audience and the opportunity to ask a question as well, okay? So just to review, council members will each ask 2 questions, and we can take one question from the audience as well. Another important bit of housekeeping is that each applicant will have 1 minute to answer the questions, and we do have our city administrator, Kelly Hayworth, will be keeping time. He has time cards. He'll hold those up for 30 seconds, and then he'll hold up a placard for stop, okay? And I know that is not a lot of time, but that is a standard amount of time that you get when you are participating in a regular candidate forum. After we have finished up the interviews, we will have our discussion. We will start by narrowing down the applicants to our top 2 or 3 choices. And then we will continue the discussion from there. We will make an informal choice this evening, and then we will formally vote at our city council meeting on June 14th, which is the next meeting coming up on Tuesday. Okay? That's a lot of information. I know I threw at you. Does anybody have any questions right now? before we get started with our first interview.
I do, Mayor.
Yes.
So when you rotate a question, we each get 2 questions.
Yes.
Do we ask it simultaneously, or do we, do we go down
We'll go
one
in
route
order.
and then we go
Yep,
back?
Yep, so
Got
what
it.
I'll do is I'll start with Mike, and then we'll go that way, and then I'll start with Mitch, and then I'll go, and then you, and then Lori, you, me,
Yep.
Mitch, and Mike.
Thank you for the clarification.
Do we ask our 2 questions at the same time?
Oh, no,
Thank you.
we'll rotate back
Yeah.
and forth,
Yeah,
sorry.
that was my question.
Yes, I'm sorry, yeah, no, we'll rotate, because we want to
Okay.
make sure that everybody,
Yes.
Yeah,
so that we're hearing everybody's questions, and,
Yes.
yeah, we'll go that way. And then, the other thing I would say too is that if you can ask 2 different questions, or if you have a follow-up, if you're free to ask a follow-up question as well.
Can we pass?
Yes,
Okay.
you sure can. Yep. The biggest thing is we want to make sure that, everybody has 15 minutes, everybody has a minute to answer the questions, and, yeah.
I have a list of
else?
about 5 questions, but I suspect there's some overlap.
Absolutely, absolutely. You bet, you bet. Anything else? Any other questions from anyone? Any questions from the candidates?
Can we start early?
We can, yeah, absolutely we can. If Barry is okay with us starting early.
Absolutely okay with me.
All right.
No objection.
I assume this is where I'm supposed to.
Yeah. All right, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me.
This is Barry Bedford, and we will start down with Councilmember Knutson. The first question.
Thanks much for your interest in the position and everybody's interest in the position. I was very impressed with all the applicants. Barry, you have a lot of experience. What would be your top priority on the council if you're appointed to the council?
Top priority, I think, would be to, there's a lot of issues that the council faces, and I'm aware of many of those. And some of them I'm not so aware of. I think one of the things I want to see that I would like to be able to participate in is to really enhance the teamwork aspect of it. I ran for council a couple years ago, and I heard a lot of people saying, well, we don't get represented. And I think that they can be represented. They are being represented. But sometimes they get the feeling they don't. So I'd like to bring together different views, listen to each other, listen to the people out there, try and empathetically understand what they're wanting, and just find a solution that's best for them.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Gross.
Hi, Barry.
Hey, Mike.
Should you be appointed today or next Tuesday, would you be a candidate for city council in 2023?
This will be a short answer. I don't know. I mean, I'm not ruling it out.
Good.
But I think I'd want to see how well I did. And if I don't think I'm doing a good job, I'd certainly not be.
Thank you.
All right. So you have, you were an employee of the city of Coralville for many, many years. Specifically, you were the chief of police. So, we certainly appreciate your service and that background that you would bring to this position. My question is, we have been wanting to make sure that our residents feel comfortable with law enforcement, that we are increasing oversight, transparency, and eliminating bias and making sure that everyone is treated fairly by our law enforcement. Do you think, given your prior employment history as chief of police, that you will be able to approach those issues in a neutral way?
Yes, without any question. That's not unlike many of the things that came up when I was first on the street for many years and then chief of police for 28 and a half years. We modified our policies and our practices as the public wanted it. I'm all for transparency. I'm all for accountability. I'm also for helping the citizens of the community to, number one, stay safe, and number two, I think is just as important, or I misstated that. I want them to feel safe, okay? And number two, I also want them to feel safe from the police and be able to trust the police. And so therefore, we have to be able to encourage the police, and I think that's what they're trying to do right now, is to be open and listen and make changes, because we did so all along my tenure. We always made changes as necessary.
Thank you so much.
First of all, I would like to thank you for putting yourself out there, to serve the city in a different way. And I know that you are a longtime Coralville City's resident. You have worked in the city for a long time. So in some way, you know what's going on in our community all these years. So my question to you today is, Barry, what are the biggest challenges facing Coralville residents right now that you are aware of?
Well, I think certainly, as the mayor just said, that there's potential concern about the relationship with the police. I mean, we see that on the news all the time. I think people need to feel safe, as I just mentioned. I think that, and one of the things I brought about as a primary thing I'd like to see done a couple years ago was the fiscal accountability and transparency, and working, and I know the city has a plan and they're working on it, but working diligently to have a way of paying that down, getting our rating back up, and making people feel that they are not under the gun. I've had lots of people come up and say, what happens if this defaults, or what happens if it's going to be on the taxpayer's back? And I think assuring them that that's not going to be the case, and doing our best to make sure it isn't.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goodrich.
Thank you, Chief Bedford. I really appreciate you filling out an application, being willing to be here, as well as everyone else who's here. I know that you have furthered your education and so on after being police chief, and I wonder if you would like to talk a little bit about that, about being a certified executive coach, a leadership trainer, and law enforcement consultant. In 1 minute.
In 1 minute, I was going to say, wow. Well, I did receive my certification through after I retired in those areas. It's an international certification. It was put out by the John Maxwell team, or the organization. John Maxwell has been noted on several occasions as being the foremost authority on leadership in the world, and Inc. magazine and others have declared him such. That's his specialty. It involved many, many hours of online training, but then also in-person certification and training. And that was for coaching as well as leadership. I have been a consultant on several federal cases that were set in the federal court for law enforcement practice and procedures as an expert witness. And then the coaching is not just for pay. I do a lot of volunteer coaching in areas of Broadway over there for people who need assistance.
Thank you.
Councilmember Nguyen, back to you.
All right. Can you please tell us how do you plan to involve residents in the decision-making process in our city if appointed?
Well, it depends on what the issue is, but trying to get input any way we can, Whether it's, we used to do coffee with a cop, and where people would come and we'd have coffee and we'd sit down with them and say, what are your concerns? What are some ways that we can do things better? What would you like to see us do? I think you can expand something like that to a lot of opportunities. I believe some of the council members in the past have had similar things where they've had ways that people can come in and talk to them and tell them exactly what they need to want to have happen. And then, and I think it's really important, I'm not saying this just because it sounds good, I think it's really important to listen to what they have to say. And then try to truly empathetically understand where they're coming from. Now, we may not agree, but we need to respect them to the point that they think we gave them a good hearing. And then go with your conscience, what you think is either legal or your conscience or what's best.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Actually, with that question, it is pretty similar to the question that I was going to ask. I was just going to ask for you to elaborate a little bit more about how you would bring a variety of voices to this process. And you mentioned in your first comments that you'd spoken with some residents that feel like they hadn't been heard. So do you have anything else you want to add to that? You touched on it quite well, I think, in the answer you just gave, but anything else you want to add?
Well, I don't want to belabor it, but I do
Yeah.
think that there are lots of people out there who have concerns, and they go along with everything until it affects them real personally, and then all of a sudden they get worked up. I think having forums or especially on issues that are of high interest, safety of our kids, my gosh, all over the place, safety of our kids in other places, and we've had, thankfully, not very many of those types of situations, but it's potential. What about how our kids can have better opportunities to succeed in their lives? I mean, as they're growing up, to get good education, to get trained for jobs, and things like that. I think the city can be part of that conversation, and trying to move people, I hate to use the term up or down, but up, by educating. It's the old, give a man a fish, he'll eat for a day. Teach them how to fish, and they can live for a lifetime.
Thank you. All right. Councilmember Brooks.
Good, thank you. Barry, what ideas do you have to make Coralville a more inclusive and welcoming community, especially for members of our community who are from historically marginalized populations?
Yeah, well, I anticipated this question, and I think it's a very, very good one. I think partially it builds off of what I just said. I think we have to go out and seek their input. And I was part of that when I was chief. We went out and met with Workers for Social Justice, and we'd meet and have a forum there. And we would go out and try and say, hey, what can we do? And I was on many committees of, what can we do to make our relationships better? I mean, if I go out there and say, well, I'm a police chief or I'm a city council person, and I want to listen to you, and then we get done and nothing changes, they're going to think I didn't listen. So there has to be two-way dialogue. And I think we have to go out and create those opportunities. And that way we build, hopefully, some confidence and trust. And I think it's important for all of us to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right.
Maybe get you out of your comfort zone a little bit.
Sure.
I think the council members know I'm passionate about recycling and composting, so I'm interested in your thoughts about Coralville's current recycling and composting programs and things they could consider doing to improve those.
Well, I would have to admit that's one area I'm not real familiar with. With all the years I was at the city, I knew that we had it. I think that it's a great deal. I participate as much as I can, whether it's the neighborhood pickup. A lot of times I try and take things down to the dumpsters or take them across to Iowa City or whatever. I'm all for it, but I don't know exactly what happens to it after I put it out on the curb. I think it's something that's important to do, but I'd like to learn more.
Fantastic. Okay. We'll start now at this end with Lori.
Thank you. One opportunity of a city council member is to preserve and enhance the positive image of our city. How would you propose to do that?
Well, I think that, number one, be vocal and visible about doing that. I think that showing up at events, talking to people, not just official events, but any events that come up, and try and encourage people to become involved and listen to what they have to say. It keeps going back to that. I think that oftentimes we have the misperception that people don't care because they don't come and ask me, or ask them. And so I think that, going out and doing that, and I think that getting them involved in many things, I would guess that the council would be surprised at some of the things people think that the council should be involved in that you're not even aware of. It's because they talk about it among themselves, and then they blame you guys for not doing something you don't even know that they want you to do. So I think we can work on that.
Fantastic. Okay, and I think everyone's had 2 questions, yeah? Are there any questions from the audience? Okay. All right. Well, thank you so much. We really appreciate you turning in your application. And again, thank you for all of your service to the city of Coralville over the
And I
years.
appreciate having this opportunity tonight. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, well, we are running a little bit ahead of schedule. The next applicant is slated to be interviewed at 6:00 p.m. And so we are at 5:54, so we can give a little bit of time for the next applicant to show up. Or if the other thing we could do is we have our 6:15 here. Are you okay? Okay, and then you can swap. If he shows up, then
He'll just take the next
he'll
place.
take the next spot. Yep, that way we can
Keep things
keep
moving.
things moving. I always like it when we are ahead of schedule. Okay. This is Eric Gissendanner. I'm sorry, can you help me pronounce your name?
And
Sorry,
Dan-
Gissendanner.
Gissendanner,
Yes.
thank you. Eric Gissendanner. Okay, and we will start with Councilmember Gross with the first question.
Well, I'm going to sound like a broken record because I plan on asking the same things. But thanks, Eric, for applying. Should you be appointed today, do you plan to be a candidate for Coralville City Council in 2023?
If I was appointed to this vacant position, I do have my eyes set on a November 2023 election, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. So can you share a little bit more about some specific qualifications that you have, that you think would be valuable to the city council?
Sure. My professional background right now and for the last few years has been in marketing and communications. I like to think of myself as someone who is always receptive of feedback. What I do right now is I work primarily in social media at Riverside Casino and Golf Resort, so I am always hearing feedback and reviews from our guests, and so I always try to take in that feedback, discuss it amongst our other marketing team members, and then take that to our leadership. And so I like to think that I'm someone who could take feedback from an audience, or in this case, an entire city, and then bring that forward to a city council position like this, where we could discuss ideas and different motions that can move forward to continue progressing the city.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you. What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the city the next year? And then if you can elaborate a little bit in the next 5 years.
Okay, sure thing. Right now, I would say that my thing right now is that I wasn't too aware of the Coralville, I'm going to be honest, too aware of this Coralville City Council. But through, you're going to hear social media come out of my mouth a lot tonight, so please forgive me on that. But that's where I get a lot of my news, and that's where a lot of my activity happens. So I think that what I would like to do is just continue informing our city about different things that are going on throughout it. I think one challenge is, I know for me, I don't know a whole lot that's going on unless I do see it pop up on a Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, or if I may be so maverick, TikTok. I don't watch a whole lot of news, and I'll be honest, I don't read a whole lot of newspapers, but I do see a whole lot of social media. So what I would like to do is just continue letting our citizens know about different events and achievements and news, whatever it may be, good or bad, through these different kind of social media channels. Thank you.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you. Okay. Councilmember Goodrich.
Okay, Eric, if you were to do a TikTok, on preserving and enhancing a positive image about our city, Coralville? What would you say in a minute?
What would I say in a minute? Might so much be not what I say, but what I'm able to show. Talking certainly has an effective voice, but also showing people what's going on is, I think, just as or even more so effective. So if we're at an event, I know last fall, for example, I was at the Heartlanders ribbon cutting ceremony, I believe. And so if you have someone there, if it was myself or someone else, with a phone there, and you're just showing how the entire community there has rallied around this organization. Coralville is a unique city in that they have a professional hockey team. Granted, it's not an NHL level, but still. So it's showing what you have going on there. And then if you're able to pull some audience members or city or citizens, if you will, I think that helps too. And it also gets city council members out in the public too. Let them know who we are.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Knutson.
Eric, what do you think Coralville's biggest weakness is?
I think Coralville's biggest weakness could be perhaps trying to differentiate itself from some of the other communities that we have around here. Obviously we're right next door to Iowa City and right next door to Tiffin. And it's right now making it so that Coralville itself has its own identity. I think there's a very cool opportunity for Coralville to become a whole, continue promoting itself as part of Johnson County. But also Coralville itself is its own place. It's the only place in Iowa that I've lived when I moved here 5 years ago, and it's really become a place that I've called sincere part of my home now, and I'm proud to say so. So I think right now it's differentiating ourselves, but also making us part of the larger Johnson County community.
Thank you. We'll bounce back to you, Lori.
Oh, to me, okay. I appreciate so much you applying for this and filling out the application and letting us get to know you and so on. There's additional committee meetings and events that take place throughout the year that we as city council members need to attend, and I wondered if you felt comfortable in taking part in additional meetings and so on besides the 2 council meetings each month.
Absolutely. The short answer is yes. I've gotten to a point in my professional life where I'm able to do a little bit more things outside of work, such as come to a city council meeting like this. Granted, though it's a special meeting, I am aware of that, but yes, I would be. My schedule has allowed for a little bit more time for me to do other things outside of the office or do a few more things from home, like remote work. So yes, I would be available to do outside of what is the normal meeting times.
Fantastic. Thank you.
So Eric, what do you see so there's two parts to this question. The first part is what do you see as the role of the city council? And the second part is what do you see as the role of the city staff?
So I see the role of the city council as kind of being a condensed but still unified voice of the Coralville people. I know, like Barry mentioned, it's it's going out in the community and hearing what people are saying, and then putting that, discussing it amongst ourselves and also with any of our audience members who are also citizens, and taking steps to continue progressing the city forward. And as far as the city staff goes, I think we're all just part of, the city council, and the city staff is all just part of one big unified team. So it's the city council helping the city council and also helping the city staff too. And it's both parties working together.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. So one of the biggest roles and responsibilities that we have as a governmental body is managing the city's budget, setting the city's budget and managing the city's budget. Tell us a little bit about what you know about the city's budget and budgeting process, and share some thoughts that you might have about that as well.
Sure. Will not be, I won't mess around. I'm not too aware of the city council's budget. I am aware of my own department's budget. It's a very It's a budget that is in the couple of millions, I know, in our marketing area, and we're responsible for managing every single dollar that comes through. If we're giving a $10 gift card, that's got to be accounted for. And also, how is that $10 gift card helping us on the other end? Like, we don't obviously want to be losing any money because that doesn't help anyone. But we also just want to keep making money. And if there are areas that are perhaps operating more in the red, evaluating them and talking amongst ourselves and saying, all right, how can we make sure that next time around we're working in the black? Because mistakes, if you will, but there might be some areas that do stumble, but if we can obviously learn from those areas to help make sure that the next time around we're a little bit more profitable or a little bit more on the positive side next time around.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Gross.
No, thank you. I will say, speaking of social media, I was scouring all the candidates' social media. It sounds like you're a pretty big hockey fan yourself, or maybe a player. So that's kind of cool. Same question. What are your ideas to make Coralville a more inclusive and welcoming community for those who particularly hail from historically marginalized populations?
Sure. I think that there is an opportunity to, once again, use that, my favorite word of the night, social media, that we can, I think that is a very good area to get people's voices, because they may not be out there or too receptive to you going and speaking to them or even attending a city council meeting, to be honest, but they might be interested in speaking to you on if this becomes part of the process. Perhaps we have like an Instagram story where we go live and just have people, and we can target that to just our area so that we're not having Joe Smith out in California chiming in with their feedback. But it is a way for us to try to be, but I think that we could use that avenue to try to listen to a part of our community that may not even be aware of how they can communicate with us, but all of a sudden, boom, we've popped up on one of their social media feeds.
Thank you.
Okay, and then last but not least.
I'll go back to recycling and composting. Your thoughts about Coralville's current programs in that area and future directions they might want to consider.
Sure. When I first moved here, the area that I lived in was not, we did not have any recycling. So I went out and sought where I could drop off all of my stuff, my cardboard and stuff. So I think it is making it making services aware of what might be available. Like, I know in my area, I believe we had to contact our landlord and plead for some recycling. I know I was one of those people. I was like, I hate throwing away cardboard and paper. That is not what I'm about. So I think it's just continuing to show that these types of services are available, and if it's not an area, then making sure people just know where they can go to drop it off. I know I used to go back over here, I think it was off 8th Street or something, so.
All right. Any questions from the audience? I don't believe so. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Eric.
Eric.
Okay, we still do not have our 6 o'clock, so we will go on to our 6:30, which is Mackensie Graham.
Everyone, thanks for having us here today.
All right. So I will go ahead and get started, and I am going to ask the same question that we've heard Councilmember Gross ask multiple times. Will you run? If you are appointed to this seat, will you run in 2023?
It's a really good question. I think it's an important question too because of the way in which this position is being filled, right? So I presume, that you could either do a special election. I believe that's how Councilmember Nguyen was elected, or this appointment process. And I think there's pros and cons to both, the one being more democratic, the other being more expedited. And I think weighing those is really important. So it sounds like you did. And so the short answer is, at this point, I don't know. However, I think that when somebody is appointed, they should work twice as hard, if not 3 times as hard, as somebody who would have ran in a special election. Just because you're coming in on the back end and having to gain that trust and gain that loyalty and gain that support that you would have garnered on the front end. So the short answer is I can't answer at this moment, but if I was appointed to this position, I would do my very best every single day.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, Councilmember Nguyen.
Thank you for being here. Can you share with us what can you bring to the table that you think are missing on this Coralville City Council?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I've thought about this a lot, and I was really hesitant whether or not to apply or not, because you think about all the things that you haven't done, right? I have not been on, many of the boards in Coralville. I've not worked for the city, right? But what I can bring is the involvement I've had with Coralville so far. So I recently got appointed last year to the Parks and Recreation Commission, which has been amazing. And also a number of different, boards and opportunities in the area, including the Iowa City Area Business Partnership, things like that. So what can I bring? I can bring not only my age. I mean, I'm 31. The median age of a Coralville resident is 32. I'm not necessarily seeing that on this council, but I'm also a lawyer, so I won't ask any of your ages. And so I think I could bring that perspective, challenges and opportunities that come along with it.
Thank you.
Councilmember Goodrich.
Thank you. Thank you for applying, Mackenzie. And you mentioned that you've enjoyed being on Parks and Recreation Committee. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Sure. So Parks and Rec has been amazing. Number one, I think because of Director Sherry Proud. She knows everything, knows everyone, knows every single piece of land in the entire city. So I think that board went really well because of her, in large part. But also I've met so many people through that. And I think that's in large part what inspired me to run, is because meeting some of the city staff through that, meeting Sherry, becoming more aware and more enmeshed in our city. There's a lot of people doing a lot of hard work and a lot of good work, and they really care. It's not just, I don't know what's the word, advertising or anything. They really do care. So yes, I have loved that. And I think it's also brought to mind a lot of the sustainability considerations that you don't necessarily see every day, but it brings it to the top of mind of just the full picture of what we look at with Coralville. Trying not to run out the time again.
All right, go for it.
I started on Parks and Rec as well,
It's a good committee.
and agree with you about Sherry. What would your top priority be if you're appointed on the council?
Sure. Top priority, I think, especially because this is an appointment process, most importantly for this position, this person in particular, is to be able to take all of the feedback, all of the information that you're receiving, and of course, filter it through your own experiences, your own perspectives, but ultimately being a mouthpiece and taking that. Just because, especially because you weren't elected on a platform. So that's number one priority with the position itself. In terms of a broader Coralville, I think, we are still coming out of COVID, and I think that's impacted our community greatly, but it also presents a opportunity in a lot of ways. We've seen a shift in the world of work, and that's kind of really cool because maybe one thing that we can do as Coralville is encourage those people who maybe came here for University of Iowa, for graduate and professional programs, and they're getting jobs that they can do remote, but they want a space to stay in that's a lot more affordable. So,
Okay.
Well, since the mayor just took my question, I'm going to go off. I'll have to go off script here a little bit. No, I'll go use my second one before someone takes that one as well. What are your ideas to make Coralville a more inclusive and welcoming community for those who hail from historically marginalized populations?
Yeah, a very important question. I think Coralville has made a lot of strides, even since I moved in 2020. I think to go back to the COVID point, I think what that has done for us as a society is it has also shown us that there's a lot of things that all of us carry around, whether it's mental health, whether it's issues that you're dealing out with home, being a caregiver, and it's kind of opened up our minds to what people deal with every day because we were looking at their lives through Zoom. So I think taking that and then pairing it with strategic plans, with ongoing committees. I know there's a lot of work being done in that space right now. But I think, taking what you guys have all done so far and building on it, getting more voices to the table and creating space to do that. I think Eric did a really nice job of talking about different ways of creating space, but people are busy. You gotta go to where they're at.
No, thank you.
Okay. My next question, name a specific decision that the city of Coralville has made or the city council has made that you disagree with and tell us why.
Whew. That is a very good question. I'm not going to make one up. One doesn't really come to mind. I think that the decision with this position was probably a difficult one. I did consider doing a petition, but ultimately didn't want to hold up the process, and so I don't know how to answer that at that moment. But if given the opportunity, I would come back with a full answer.
All right. So, if selected or appointed, how will you solicit input from residents in area of the city outside of where you live? So each of us live in a neighborhood, right? And we get comfortable in our neighborhood. How do we go outside of our neighborhood, outside of our comfort zone, to get a lot more voices?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's really hard. I think even the most extroverted person can still feel that social anxiety where you drive up and you're like, wait, is it too late to go back home? But it's important to, as I said, create space. So I think that when you create, I love events. I like planning events. And so I think when you make events happen and you invite people from different spaces outside your neighborhood, that you are also inviting them to be uncomfortable with you in a way. And let's be honest, we're adults. It's hard to make friends. It's hard to make friends as an adult. It's hard to talk to people as an adult if you're not working with them day to day, if you're not, building those relationships day to day. So that is something I would like to see this position do. I know it's difficult, but a lot more of.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And in regard to that, there's additional committee meetings and events that take place at various times, days, and locations throughout the community. Do you feel comfortable that you can take part in additional activities?
I do. I would say I've never met a committee that I didn't like. I've met some committees that I could see running better, but I've never met one that I haven't liked. So the short answer is yes, I would be more than delighted to join additional committees. Recently, I was working with the Parks and Rec Commission on the Reimagining 5th Street plan, and I think if that's an example of the types of committees and different ways that we're bringing people all together, that's really cool, and I want to do more of that.
Okay. Good to hear.
Coralville has a reputation for using tax increment financing, or TIFs,
Okay.
I would say somewhat aggressively. What are your thoughts about Coralville's TIF districts and their use of the TIF?
That is a great question, and I'm not going to be able to answer that off the top of my head. But what I can say is that one of the best lessons I learned was when I worked at my first job at Hy-Vee, and the lesson was that if you don't know, you smile and you say, I don't know the answer to that at this moment, but I'm going to go find somebody who can. And so in this situation, I would go find people who can provide perspectives on that. But also, I do my homework. So if presented with a question and presented with an item on an agenda where we needed to be very prepared for that, you can guarantee I would get up to speed on that.
You know, I think I've been on council for 15 years, and I think there's been 3 times where I've been the only negative vote, and the last one was to have an election, and I was to do that with that, which is why I'm asking the question about that for the issues you raised. So, but because of your educational background with public policy, what if you were to be appointed to this position? What's one of the first policies you'd want to propose that our council consider?
Sure. So I think, policy as a theory, right, is one thing, and then policy in action is another. Policy in action, I think, is a lot more fun. So one policy in action that I would propose is I would like to see a commitment towards walkability in our community. I think there's a lot of what we've seen through Parks and Rec, there's so many cool spaces that we can invite people to go to. But there are some areas that are really hard to navigate. And so I think overall making our community more walkable, more bikeable. I personally would love to head up some sort of work group that would look into that and organize, set out a policy for how are we going to move Coralville into a space where it is more walkable and accessible.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. Are there any questions from the audience? I don't believe that there are. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mackensie.
Appreciate your time.
All right. Keith Jones.
Yeah, with my kid coming on this thing, scary.
Good evening.
Hello. All right. Start with Councilmember Nguyen.
I get to start. Thank you for being here, Keith. My first question to you is, please describe your experience in engaging with members of all races, people from a wide variety of ethnic and socioeconomic backgrounds, and people with disability. How would you help the city effectively respond to the needs of the diverse resident that we serve?
Well, I think the important thing is trying to bring all those voices together. I know that's a challenge, but I think it's something the city really needs to focus on. There's been a number of questions already in that area. The more people that can be brought to the table, the better off the city will be. I'm not sure I have a specific answer to how I would specifically do that, but I think that would be one of the priorities that I would have if I were chosen for this position, would be to work with the council to find ways to help with, to bring these marginalized citizens together. We have a number of organizations, I think, that could partner in doing that, and I would look to support that sort of effort.
Thank you.
Thank you for applying for this position, and this question is probably an easy one for you, but it's one of my questions, so I'll ask you, Keith. One opportunity of a city council member is to preserve and enhance the positive image of our city. How would you propose to do that?
Well, I mean this in all seriousness. I would do what Lori Goodrich does.
Oh,
Because you're at every event that I'm at, and I think really the broader answer to that question, Lori, is it's its involvement. You need to be out there where the citizens can see you. I always felt in my work career that I didn't have a personal life. My personal life and my work life came together, and I had to represent my employer in my personal life. I think you have to do that on the council, and I think you have to be open and fair-minded. You have to be open and seek input and be fair-minded in decisions.
Thank you. Okay, go for it.
It seems like you have some experience in finance and loans. So I'm interested in your thoughts about Coralville's somewhat aggressive TIF background and history.
Well, Mike, if you'd asked me that 10, 15 years ago, I might have a different answer. What I'd say today, there's no question that Coral's been aggressive, but if you look at the results of that aggressiveness, I don't think anybody can argue that success. And I think that Coralville has worked hard, the council has worked hard to have a plan in place to repay debt. I think it's an ongoing issue that faces the council, and it would be one of my priorities if I were selected for the position to try to help and focus on those things. But As a citizen of Coralville, to see how Coralville has progressed, it's hard for me to be overly critical of the way that the financing's been put together to make that happen.
Thank you.
Hi, Keith. Should you be appointed today, would you be a candidate for city council in 2023?
One of the things that appeals to me about this is it's an 18-month appointment, and I can tell you without a doubt that I would not run in '23.
Thank you. So one of the biggest priorities of this council is affordable housing. You know, we've talked a lot about the diversity, equity, and inclusion piece as well. One of the policy priorities we've not touched on is affordable housing. So can you give some examples of how you would approach the issue of affordable housing in the city of Coralville?
Affordable housing is certainly a challenging issue, and one that Coralville has really tried to work on for a number of years. I think some of the things that have been done regarding rehabilitation of older homes is a real plus, and I think we should look for ways to expand that. I think there may be some opportunities for certain cooperative type efforts where there can be some rental assistance and things of that nature. It's really a challenging issue, and many municipalities are facing it, but I think it really should be a priority of the council.
Thank you.
Keith, I know you are a longtime Coralville resident. So if there's one thing that you could change in our zoning code, what would that be and why?
This is going to go back to one of Mike's questions. The one thing I would change is get my glass recycled at curbside. I have a lot of respect for the city council, and I'm not really critical of what's done. I've enjoyed living in this community for 47 years, raising my family, working, and I'm not sure there's anything I would change.
Thank you.
Keith, you've served on the library board committee for many years. What's your favorite thing about serving on the library board?
There's lots of things I like. I mean, I think my favorite thing, and part of it was we were involved in sponsorship, but I think the summer reading program, I think the children's programs that are there and the outreach that our children's librarians do is really my favorite thing at the library.
Oh, yeah, okay. I thought I asked two questions.
Did you ask? Okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay. I just
Like I'm
didn't-
listening.
It's Mike.
We'll go to
want
Mike,
to-
yes, thank you.
I'll ask you to expand on the recycling
Yes.
and composting current programs and things we can do to improve other than picking up glass curbside.
Well, I appreciate the efforts that Coralville's done. I think that I just look in my own neighborhood and other neighborhoods, there's people that are not recycling and not recycling regularly. I think we need to promote that. I know it's promoted some in the connection, but I think we need to promote it more in the connection, using social media to promote it and maybe explaining issues of why it's important to recycle. I think a lot of people, I think we've come a long way in recycling, quite frankly, but we've got a long way to go, I think, and just more publicity about it, I think would really be helpful.
I think I'm going to use my new second question because Councilmember Nguyen's first question kind of answered what I was going for the second, but so I'll go back to that. What would be one of the first policies you propose that we consider as your new colleagues, should you be appointed?
Well, I think we need to consider a way for more community involvement, more citizen involvement. We need to cultivate that, and we need to find a way to make that happen. And that's across the board. That's every citizen, marginalized and others. I'd like to see some work on a policy that we could, as I said earlier, bring more people to the table.
Thank you.
So one of the one of the things about being in elected office is that you do frequently hear feedback from individuals who are perhaps upset with the decision that you have made, or, that require some more explanation, and kind of navigating some intense feelings and things like that with constituents. So how, talk to us a little bit. Have you ever, in your career, had to deal with someone that was upset with you on an issue, and how did you navigate that, those types of conflicts?
Well, the answer to the question about have I dealt with that, I've dealt with that many times in my work with, especially in the loan area, not being able to do something somebody wanted to do. I think all you can do, Mayor, is to listen and to try to explain in the best way you can of why that decision was reached. And if there's valid points that the citizen would have, I think investigating those further would help. Maybe there's more information they could bring. But I think the best way to handle that is to listen and to be fair in your decision and to stand by that decision.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, are there any questions from the audience? No? Okay. All right,
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very
Thank you
much.
very much.
I would just say I'm really impressed with the number of candidates for
Yes.
this and the quality of the candidates. It's really encouraging to me to see that this kind of support from the citizens of Coralville.
I agree, absolutely. Thank you so much. Okay, so, let's see. We do not have our 7 o'clock. We're not yet. We don't have, we're ahead of schedule. So I believe, Fay, would you like to? Yes. I'm just going through the list, and we are very fortunate to be running ahead of schedule this evening, so.
I will give you a peek at what I look like.
Okay.
Which, if you pass through our neighborhood, this is not what I look like.
Sure.
Good evening.
Yes, good evening. Okay, so I will give you just a quick rundown of how, you've probably gotten a bit of a sense of how this is going to work. We each ask 2 questions. I was trying to have a meaningful way of kind of going back and forth, but it's good. Yeah. But we're all going to take turns of asking a question first. You have 1 minute to respond.
Sure.
To each question, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
So, okay, Lori, why don't you go first?
All right, thank
Hi,
you so
Lori.
much for applying and being here tonight. One opportunity of a city council member is to preserve and enhance the positive image of our city. How would you propose to do that?
Prior to me coming here tonight, you've already done an excellent job, and I chose Coralville as a place to retire for obvious reasons and access. And when Coralville simply had a strip, I would come here and shop at the new mall and just simply watch the city grow and bloom, and then deal with the flood mitigations recently. So when I chose my home, I looked at the flood map and chose a wise place. But Coralville's already doing a good job, and I hope that council members, if I were chosen, would put me under their wing, and I would just dovetail into what already is being done. The Connection is a very good publication, and I really appreciate that it's still paper, especially for many of us are more elderly than others. And so I think you're doing a good job. I would continue on that path.
Thank you.
Sure, I'll go to one of my standard recycling and composting in Coralville. Your thoughts about that and ways we can improve it?
It's done a commendable job. I would say, too, that if not curbside, that if there were a glass depot other than running to the landfill or clear across to restore, that would be great. So if that some of the places.
We have
yeah.
that now. We just got that.
Good. Yeah. And then the compost, too. When we purchased our properties, we actually had 4 to 6 inches of compost put under the sod, and that was a very wonderful program. So yard aeration, stuff like that, expanding those type of programs, we're making the compost more usable, I think, and a lot of people aren't used to getting dirt under their fingernails, so, yeah. Continue what you're doing and expand. Thank you.
Hi, Fay, how are you?
Very good, Mitch.
Good, good. Should you be appointed today, would you be a candidate for Coralville City Council in 2023?
I would not at this point. I'm not saying I couldn't be swayed, but part of the political hurrah that you all went through individually and collectively, where our politics are in the United States, it's not appealing to me at this time, but I do feel I have a big, huge desire, and I've always liked to serve the public and community I live in.
Okay, thank you.
So, on that note, to the question of service and experience, can you give us some specific examples of some of the things that qualify you for the role of a city council member?
I have served very briefly on another city council in a small community called Brighton. I would not even begin to elevate that to the level of this involvement, but I have also served on the Iowa Veterinary Medical Association's Judicial Council, reviewing problems that our own colleagues have brought in. I've served on veterinary service councils at the American Veterinary Medical Service level, at the national level, and plus, although not directly city council, I spent 34 years as a volunteer first responder in that a community of 1,000 serving a broad county area. So I think I have a lot of different types of ancillary committees I've done.
Thank you.
Can I ask you, what years were you on council in Brighton?
Oh my gosh, now you're going to date me. I think probably in the 77, 78
Okay.
time frame.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That doesn't count as my question, does it, Mayor?
No,
All right.
no, we're doing well on time,
All right,
no
thank you.
problem at all, absolutely. Okay.
Faye, thank you for being here.
You're welcome.
What would you hope to accomplish as a city councilor serving the rest of someone else's term?
I, of course, would look a little closer into what that person was trying to accomplish, and also what the entire city council, I would be all ears, I think, for at least the first half a dozen council meetings, and be relying upon you guys to help me focus into what needs to be done. Things I would like to see done would be to seriously take a relook at Coralville's long-term development plan, to if nothing else, almost put a moratorium on the destruction of any more of our natural woodlands that we have, and understand what that does to our water quality.
Thank you.
I'm going to go off grid a little bit here. And
Sure.
I'm just wondering, Faye, what do you think about the area on Highway 6, the south east corner of Coralville? We're looking at that for some type of development or something. It's down by Walgreens back in that area, and I know you talk about flood, you know, I mean, that it's an area that needs some work. Do you have any ideas or thoughts? I'm putting you on the spot.
That is a little bit on the spot, because I'm not quite sure if that would be a residential area, but when we talk about maybe trying to make some affordable housing, is that a place that's close to our transportation hubs, where people don't have to drive or park or work, and have maybe start-in income, but also close enough to the university that it could maybe get some of the young university folks that are maybe in a residency program beyond in higher and advanced degrees. So I'm not sure what it is, if it'd be industry or if it'd be housing.
Yeah, I think you're on good tracks.
Okay.
What do you think are the biggest challenges facing Coralville residents right now? Specifically, residents who are in need of resources.
There are day-to-day resources that people are in great need of. I think there are people who are trying to access more childcare. I think that's very important for the young folks to get back to work. And I see that as a retired person during the day. I also see there's just a basic need to understand on how to care for this home. We have we've talked about we have very ethnically and racially diverse community. Not all of that is lower income or impoverished. A lot of it also is very advanced degrees and very intelligent people who have resources, but we need more public education and matching, maybe mentoring or matching of people who could partnership with those sorts of people.
Thank you.
So I want to just ask a very, it's a little bit of a follow-up question. You mentioned that, and your application shows that you have experience with EMS, public and mental health advisory boards, and you mentioned a little bit of experience with what sounds like some public safety.
Yes.
So can you talk a little bit about how you would approach, we are seeing a lot of connection between public safety and mental health issues.
Absolutely.
Can you talk a little bit about what are some policies and ideas that you would bring to the table to help us address some of those issues?
We had a countywide program. I come from Washington County, where we would periodically, on an annual basis, have countywide disaster drills. And some of them would be mental health. I've been on EMS calls where there's mental health is behind that issue, ridden with patients up to the university. And I think that one thing we were able to do is pull partnerships together from all different, from human public health. I offered a veterinary component, but also serving a rural community, so I had that insight to rural. Our fire department was volunteer, just like here in Coralville. We have one of the largest volunteer fire departments in Coralville. Bringing people together who serve those people. We have the fire departments, our police departments, our EMS departments that have partnership. They have a lot of insight. Also, our ecumenical people that would get, and we got those people together during the time when we had a high level of suicide and a lot of job loss. So bringing those people together from the community level to offer programs to the others.
Thank you.
Were you large or small animals?
Oh, everything.
Everything. Nice.
My arm disappeared many times.
That's your question.
No, hey, I asked two cheesy ones, the equal one, yeah. You mentioned the diverseness of our community. So
Yes.
what ideas do you have for Coralville to be more inclusive and more welcoming to our citizens who hail from historically marginalized populations?
Whether it be day camps for their children, or whether it be, again, mentoring with somebody else in the neighborhood, a community, making programs, or some of the events Coralville has are wonderful. When we have people, when the fire department has their pancake breakfast, inviting some of those people, marginalized people, to that, and they come, because some of the firemen, volunteer firemen, are students, and some of them don't have a very good paying job, but they're very essential, and I think bottom-up programs are going to work the best for an inclusive community. Open spaces that allow people to gather together, very important. Every neighborhood park has a little bit different flavor that goes there. We use our Ryan Circle as a place to gather every summer with our annual meeting. More, now that we're exiting COVID, more of these little outside events that would be more neighborhood-wise, so people in the neighborhood get to know each other. We have a lovely neighborhood.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I didn't see this in your application, that you have more experience on council than I do, apparently. I'm sure, because I've only been serving, since January. Tell us about your biggest accomplishments, or your favorite accomplishment when serving on council in Brighton.
Getting recognition for the need of a volunteer emergency medical department, and getting it recognized as something the city should help put a roof over, so to speak, quite literally. And I think that was very important to allow rural access, medical access, but it also created a tie from the rural area to the community. And I don't think we can even begin, sitting in this council chamber, to know how many people from our rural counties depend upon Coralville and Iowa City, and particularly Coralville because of the shopping hub it is. So I think we have many, many dollars spent from outside of the community. And I think we need to bring those together. And the accomplishment was to recognize that every city has a larger area than just the city limits that they serve.
Thank
And I
you.
think that was one of the biggest accomplishments.
Thank
Okay.
you. And Councilmember Bigger.
I
Did you
think
get
I
two?
did. Yes,
Okay.
I did.
All right.
Thank you.
Any questions from the audience? Okay.
I have one.
Yes.
Go for
Would
it.
I get a nice shirt with the Coralville logo on it?
That is one of the
I really
That
admire,
is
I really admire
one
the
of
artwork.
the many
This-
perks.
Yes, it's a wonderful.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you.
No one asked about the salary.
Right, that's another perk.
It's in the
Just
post.
kidding.
It's posted.
I know. I'm joking.
It's really not a perk. I mean, kind of. All right, so we are well ahead of schedule, which is fantastic. We have until 7 o'clock until our next applicant is set to arrive. So I propose that we take a break. And
See if
then
he shows.
we'll come back, we'll give him a little bit of time, and that'll be about 15 minutes or so, 10, 15 minutes. And then we'll come back. And since we're getting a break right now, we will go straight into the discussion after we do his interview.
Understood.
Okay, all right. So I'm going to make a motion to, or I need a motion to pause.
Before that, Mayor,
Yes.
if the 6 o'clock appointment showed up,
We would
we
absolutely
would,
do it, yep,
okay,
yes,
just wanted to make sure.
absolutely, you bet.
And
you
if
bet.
no one's here at 7, then we're closing it and say that's it.
I'll give like till about 7:05, but I mean, I don't wanna, that's a
I
great
just think we need to
question.
have a definitive answer on that,
Sure.
just for fairness, so.
Sure. I think that if he arrives, then I think he should have the chance to be interviewed. Is everybody okay with that?
For both candidates.
Yes, from
Mhm.
both,
Okay.
yes,
Yep.
yes.
Yeah, because
I'm
the last
assuming- yeah,
appointment is not
yeah.
until 7:15. If you look
Yes.
at our schedule.
Oh, where did my schedule go? I had it, there it is.
Yeah.
Well, she just went.
Yes, that's what I mean.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we are slated until 7:15 for our last
Sure.
interview.
Yeah.
Is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So-
I'm happy to give extra time
Okay.
if those individuals arrive and want to keep going. But for now, we'll take a break, but I appreciate everybody being flexible with this. There is no playbook. Unfortunately, we're kind of having to adjust and create this a little bit on the fly. So I do appreciate everyone's flexibility with the timing, and it's a
So
little bit
I'm-
unorthodox, but that's okay.
I move we take a break.
Okay, moved by Goodrich,
Second,
seconded by Nguyen. All in favor, say aye.
I.
Aye.
Aye, all right, we are adjourned. Take a little break, and then we will come back. Go ahead and get started. I will call this meeting back into order, and we will continue with our interviews. The next candidate that we have is Phuong. Would you like to come up? All right, and since you were not here earlier, I'll go ahead and just give you an overview of how the process is going to go. So we are each going to ask you 2 questions. We're going to go kind of in a, random order. You will have 1 minute to answer each question that we ask. And our city administrator, Kelly Hayworth, is keeping time. So he'll have a card for you at 30 seconds and one for stop. And then I am asking if the audience has questions as well. So far, there have not been any. So that's pretty-
I may be the only one.
yeah. Yes. Yes. Okay. So let's go ahead and get started. And I'm trying to remember where did we leave
I
off?
believe it's Mike again.
Mike. Okay.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's the 6, right? That's right.
Yep. Yes. Yeah, there you go.
So your application kind of screams for one of my go-to questions here. But you don't know what it is because you weren't here. So have a lot of financial background and research in TIFs, and as you probably know, Coralville has had pretty aggressive history in utilizing TIFs for a lot of their development. Interested in your thoughts about that, both past, present, and future thoughts about use of TIF in Coralville.
Yeah, I'm very impressed with the use of TIF in Coralville, and Coralville ranks first in the entire state in terms of debt per capita. And of course, that ranking, the first ranking, comes primarily from the TIF use. And of course, I know that Coralville has used the so-called annual appropriations in order to overpass or to override the, not override, but to avert the constitutional debt limit for the cities. Of course, at the end of the day, what a city use, that is how to use that for development. And I think that Coralville has been using that, obviously, from TIF for good purposes and for great development. For example, in Iowa River Landing and the Coralville, the Cornridge Mall is the first example. And I believe that what the city has been using TIF is the right direction.
Thank you.
Hey, Phuong, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Yes.
Phuong, here's my question I've been asking everybody. Should you be appointed today to the Coralville City Council, would you be a candidate for Coralville City Council in 2023?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you.
So I'd like to hear some of your thoughts on ways that the city can address some of the systemic inequities that we see in our community.
Oh, that's a good question. I think one of the equities now on the like a major topic that most cities are facing. And I think from my perspective, the issue is more at the housing affordability level, and low-income people cannot afford to buy a home or to achieve their American dream. So far, the development in the Iowa City and especially in Coralville as a neighborhood that is affected by the shortage of housing. Of course, there's several factors that leads to housing affordability. But what Coralville is doing is to address that issue by providing a lot of housing permits for housing developments. Of course, there's some NIMBYism right there. I serve on the Planning Housing Committee, and I see that right there.
Thank you. That's your time. Thank you.
Thank you.
You right?
All right. John Phuong, thank you for being here. If you could change one thing in our zoning code, because I know that you serve on the Planning and Zoning Commission and you also teach, municipal public finance and budgeting, so you have understanding in that realm. So if you could change one thing in our zoning code, what would it be and why?
I think one thing I would change is that Coralville should implement or try out the form-based zoning instead of traditional zoning where you have in residential, industrial areas. So with form-based, we can have mixed developments, and mixed developments can address the issue of housing affordability because folks can't, can live in high-rise buildings or apartments, and in the lower level, we have commercial, offices or stores. So using form code zoning, form-based zoning is a step ahead in the right direction. And Iowa City has already used that. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for applying. I have a question about committee meetings and events that take place at various different times than the 2 times a month city council meeting, and I'm wondering if you feel comfortable that you'll be able to take part in additional activities as a council member.
Absolutely. I'm a faculty member at USD Iowa, and I am already tenured. So the pressure from publications and stuff has been lessened for me. and I want to serve more. Basically, I'm willing to serve, Coralville, the place, the city. I've been living here for, I don't know, since 2014. I was living in Iowa City, but so I have a house here since 2014, so I want to serve more. So.
Thank you. Go ahead.
If appointed, what would be your top priority on the Coralville City Council?
My top priority is because of my expertise. I want to focus more on how to reduce the debt per capita. And as I said earlier, even though we are using debt for great causes for development, but I want to make sure that the ranking is not that high, and we can reduce that ranking limit. Because at the end of the day, it's about intergenerational equity, right? If we use too much debt, the later generation and later, residents of Coralville have to pay for those debts, because at the end of the day, we have to pay. So we want to make sure that we can reduce that debt per capita, and while still have a great development in Coralville.
Thank you.
So I think, Phuong, I'll follow up on my colleague's question there. What specifically would you propose that the council consider to reduce the per capita debt?
So far, Coralville is still ranks low in terms of property tax rates compared to Iowa City, and I think a little bit lower or comparable to North Liberty. But the debt shells is too high, even compared to Iowa City. So maybe we cannot don't have to reduce the property taxes a little bit, but keep on increasing a little bit to pay off the debt. So that we can lower the debt, or we can postpone issuing more debt, and making sure that what have been issuing have been used, put in good use, and we don't have to, because not just the debt. When you have new development, we not just have new investment, but also have upkeep and maintenance. And those tax costly, so we have to make sure that we have to balance those needs in the future.
Thank you.
So one of the other issues that we have been discussing in the city of Coralville is what role does the city have in providing a social safety net for its citizens? You have a lot of expertise on planning and zoning. You have a lot of expertise on the financial side of things. Talk to me a little bit about how you would approach issues related to social services and the city's social safety net, the services that we provide to residents that need that safety net, those safety nets.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think for social safety, theoretically, it should be provided at a higher level, not just at a city level, because that may generate some of the pernicious incentives for people to move around just to get their social safety. So that's why it had to be provided at the state level or federal level. For the city, you can provide some smaller incentives to address the basic needs, but the incentives, I think, should not be large enough to create movement across cities, because at the end of the day, we are looking at the regional development, right? We cannot want to draw residents from Iowa City, existing residents from Iowa City, and from North Liberty. We want to develop so that everybody develop at the same time. So we have a great region, not just one city at the expense of the others.
Thank you.
What do you see as the biggest challenges facing the city in the next 2 years? And then can you please describe what change would you like to see happen in Coralville within the next 2 years?
Oh, that's a big question. So I think the pandemic is still at the back of everybody's body, and it may still affect residents' lives. And I think even if the federal government has some package, but now has been gone. So how to make sure that people those who are facing with the financial difficulties receive some support from the city. And we have a very great job, numbers from federal government, But I'm not sure whether, you know, the job numbers in the city, whether the people can find jobs to tie them over to the pandemic. In terms of the next policy, big policy to change, I haven't you know, thought or looked at all the policies that to make one big change. But I hope that when I serve on a committee or the council,
That's your
city
time.
council, I will.
Thank you. Okay, Lori.
Phuong, I'll let you continue with this. One opportunity of a city council member is to preserve and enhance the positive image of our city. How would you propose to do that?
I think Coralville, basically because of my expertise, you know, but Coralville is considered to be too abusive in terms of TIF use, and basically it came from the case of when you know Coralville tried to attract, you know, one more into Coralville at the expense of the outcry from our city, and you know, when we have a great case when, you know, the
I think you meant to lift the other one.
it's okay. Stop saying.
Sorry about that. Sorry about that. Continue.
Okay, when the TIF, you know, expired at Cornbridge Mall, it made everybody happy, and because of the flush of money from the TIF district. So I want to change the perception that now the Cornville works collaboratively with other cities in order to have a great plan for development. And I think that regional development is a key for future development.
Thank you. And are there any questions from the audience? Don't believe that there are. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you
It's a
very
great honor.
much.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay. So we have now gone through all of the interviews except for our 6 o'clock, and I do just want to say that if he shows up, we will definitely give him a chance to be interviewed. But I think since it's an hour and 10 minutes past the time that he was to be here, I think we're safe to go on with the discussion. Is everybody okay with that?
For sure.
Okay.
I think so.
Great. All right. Well, I do just want to start this by, again, saying thank you to everyone who applied. Thank you so much for stepping up. I know that, again, like I said earlier, this is a bit of an unorthodox process, but, you know, we are really fortunate to have so many people in our community that are willing to serve. And I just want to say, I think that, you know, no matter what the outcome is this evening, I think that the city of Coralville will be in good hands. So I really appreciate you all taking the time to be here and to speak with us tonight. All right. So, what are our thoughts?
Well, I think one of the I can't think of the word.
Criteria?
Yes.
No?
One of the criteria is that, you know, this is to fulfill, to finish someone's term, and we talk about whether having a special election or an appointment, and we weigh the pro and the con of both, and we go with the appointment with the condition that the candidate would not seek office in this upcoming election. Certainly, they can seek office in the next coming election, so skip a cycle, per se. You know, because I think we were concerned that giving someone a leg up to gain a seat in the office. So
Yeah.
that could be our starting point.
Yes, I agree, and just to clarify, that is not a stipulation that we could make a condition of the appointment
Exactly.
process. I want to make that very clear, because this was something that we spoke about at length. And I know that it is very important to Mitch. It is very important to me as well. Mitch, one of your comments that I really liked, or one of your quotes, is that the advantage of incumbency should be given by the people. It should be earned in a special or in an election. Because, you know, it's not a universal truth, but in general, incumbents have an advantage. And I believe that a informal, for me at least, an informal condition of appointment is that you forfeit that advantage, that incumbency advantage. And that's not something that we can require. That's not something that we can, you know, we could have made conditional upon application, but we spoke at length both during the work session on, I don't remember the date of the work session, and then also at our last meeting, spoke at length about how that will factor heavily into the decision that we make. Whether or not someone, if they are appointed, will seek re-election after appointment. Mitch, do you want to chime in on that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's it. I mean, to be honest, I would have loved. I mean, before I say something, Mayor, I'll echo what everyone said. I mean, the six of you are all. I mean, I feel so emboldened. I mean, the service that many of you have already given our community, and then what the future is bright. And no matter how this goes, I hope all of you stay involved, because I feel very, very emboldened. And for the record, I didn't want to do this whole process. I wanted to have the election, but I mean, this part I'm glad that we did. I would have loved to see all of you compete in an election, to be honest, and be at a forum and have voters decide and hear their questions. But
I'm glad they didn't compete in the last election.
Wow.
I just think, I'm a government teacher, for those of you who don't know, but just the power of incumbency is real, and I think it's even exacerbated in local elections, and I just think we have to be mindful of that. And so for me, and I gotta be honest, I feel sheepish even voting in this piece, since I didn't want this, so I don't want to be like a hypocrite or anything, but it would be hard for me to support somebody for the appointment who is wanting to run for re-election when I thought we should have an election in the first place. So that makes sense.
I totally get it.
I don't feel like I'm articulating myself very well, but that's kind of where I'm at, which is why I asked that question to everybody. And not that, and everyone, I mean, it's a free country. You have a right to run for election at any time you want to, and I support that. But then when asked to, in this situation, to speak on behalf of 18,000 citizens, it makes me nervous of appointing somebody then who would have an advantage of this. I mean, I bet my guess is we've had in the last 40, 50 years, maybe 2 incumbents lose, if that. So, I mean, people told me I was the first person in the history of Coralville to defeat an incumbent. Maybe that's true, maybe that's not. I don't even know. But so I just don't think it's happened often, and I just think we got to be fair to the voters.
Yeah, and to be clear, Mitch, that was your question was one that I had on my list as well. So like that, but I
you just
agree
came with
with
more
you.
questions than I did.
Yeah.
I only came with 2.
I agree with you though that part of the trade-off, I feel, and I agree with you 100%. It's a free country. Anybody can do it. Even if you said, no, I'm not going to run, there's nothing that would stop you from doing it, right? But right now, in this moment, when we are tasked with this decision, that's certainly going to factor in. And I feel that that's part of the trade-off. All of us ran lengthy campaigns, and, so I think that we don't want, we don't want to unintentionally give someone an incumbent advantage. So that will factor into the decision that I make. Lori,
Can I
sorry.
just ask one procedural question? Like, how is the decision getting made? I guess I don't even
Tonight,
understand that.
so it'll be similar to how we do it with a regular work session. So tonight we'll make an informal decision, and then we will vote on that at our June 14th meeting. So similar to how we made the decision to have the appointment versus the election. Does that make sense?
So whoever gets appointed has to have the majority of the vote of the council?
Yes, exactly.
At a formal meeting?
Yep,
Okay.
at a formal meeting. So we'll, and I think what we should do right now is narrow it down to the top 2 or 3 that we wanna discuss, and then we'll go from there as far as like who the majority of us right now want to have on the agenda for Tuesday night. Is that clear to everyone? Okay. Okay. This is typical, a typical process.
But that's a little bit miserable if what I'm hearing is, and I use the word criteria, is that they have stated that they will not run.
Well, and that's not,
Again,
I mean,
so
we
that would
can,
be 2 people.
we will talk about, I think it's fair to talk about every candidate, but I'm just saying that that will weigh heavily into who I advocate for, as far as.
Because I see each candidate had,
Yes.
value
Exactly.
that
That's what's tough.
would
I
really
agree.
add to us in the next 18 months that would really create some good activity for our council.
Absolutely.
I just want to say that has it been a special election, we might not have a pool of diverse candidates like we have today. I mean, that's just the honest truth. It's running a campaign take work, time, money, effort. Not everybody have the time or, the desire really to do that, to seek public office. So in some way, it put us in a really difficult position right now to make the choice. But I'm grateful for the pool of candidates that we have.
Yes, same. And I agree, Lori. That is tough. That is tough. But I feel just very strongly that that's the trade-off of the appointment. That's and again, nobody, even people that say they're not going to run, have every right to still run.
Yeah.
They have every right to still run. That's not a guarantee. But I think it's a valuable question to ask, and I think it should be a factor. And that's just me, though.
Yeah, well, this is a job interview.
Yeah, it is.
Essentially.
Yeah.
So looking at, in that scope, who fit best for the job?
Yeah.
And what, not only who fit best for the job, but what is the job of this council?
Yes.
What is our job as a council? And the person that's taking this seat, need to work together as a unit with this council. So that is one of the criteria that we also need to look for.
And I think one of the things that makes it hard is that I heard that from every single candidate. Every single candidate really understood the collaborative nature of this work. Lot of, I heard a lot of fantastic answers about, empathy. I heard a lot of fantastic answers about the role of listening, and being, somewhat neutral in some cases, just understanding that, our job is to get all sides of the story and to make, and understand all sides of the issue, and make decisions in collaboration with each other. And that was one of the things that makes this tough, is that I did hear a lot of great answers along those lines from every candidate.
Yeah, all 6 candidates would bring something, would bring
Yeah, I agree.
expertise, bring experience. I mean, as a colleague, I'd have no issue with any of the 6. So for me, that's not, I've been consistent on my stance since the get-go, and I'm not going to waver from it.
What are your thoughts, Mike?
I kind of agree. We could work, I'd be very happy to work with all the candidates, very happy with the applicant pool. Was a little worried we wouldn't get any applicants, to be honest with you. And started to trickle in last week and thrilled that we got so many great applicants. I do think that running again is an indication. I'm not as closed-minded about it, I'll say, as Mitch. And it's not a slam dunk for me that they're not going to run. I think Lori and I might be more in the camp from previous discussions like that, but it is a factor for me. And experience is also a huge factor. And we have a lot of experienced candidates here, but I think one stands out with the long-term volunteer experience with the community. And I think Mr. Jones stands out to me as the strongest applicant in this pool, and he has committed not to run, understanding that he can change his mind on that.
I just want to say one thing. I'm not sure. I hope you don't think I'm being closed-minded. No, because it's just a principle of mine. So, I'm not going to compromise on a principle. So I think there's a difference between being closed-minded and principled. So I just, I feel
I think that maybe, Mike, what you were alluding to is that it's not a deal breaker. For Mitch,
me, it's not,
yeah.
is it accurate to say that for you, I don't want to speak for you, but is it accurate to say that for you that would be a deal breaker?
For me, yeah, that's what
Okay.
I've been saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Just so that's what I think that's what
Yeah.
you meant.
And-
That it's
and
not
for
a
me,
deal
if-
breaker for you.
If we had a very experienced candidate who wasn't clear on what they wanted to do, and somebody who was very inexperienced and interviewed very poorly, which fortunately we didn't have any of those, but said they weren't going to run again, I would not prioritize them.
No, I wouldn't
in that
either in that
manner. But
situation.
it, so it's just a factor for me.
Absolutely. That makes
It's not a
great
deal
sense.
breaker
I
for
can
me.
see- yeah.
Yes, that makes great sense. And I would agree that, I really appreciate Chief Bedford's long service to the community, and I really loved hearing him talk about empathy and listening. I thought, because that's something that I work, something that I value in leadership as well, and I loved hearing that. I will say I've had a lot of experience working with Mr. Jones on I've seen his work firsthand, and he's so soft-spoken, and I think very, very humble about the impact that he has had on this community. And if you just take a look at his application, you'll see the breadth of service that he has given. One of the other things that I appreciated about his application is that he was very explicit in stating that he has been interested, but was concerned about there being a conflict of interest with his career that he had for many years. And I thought that was really great that he acknowledged that. And the fact that he set aside that, the desire to run, but was concerned about, a potential conflict, that he waited, and, he never did take that step until now, I think speaks to his character. Also, the other candidate, I was impressed with all of the candidates, but the other one that stood out to me was Miss Vittetoe. I'm sorry if I butcher your name. Vittetoe, yes. Loved the municipal experience is a huge plus for me as well. Loved hearing the answer about the connection between public safety, mental health issues. Really, really appreciate that experience. And the engagement, too, with sustainability issues. Mike, I know that that's something that is really important to you. So, again, it's tough because I agree wholeheartedly with everybody. I love Mr. Wing's expertise on TIF and zoning. I think that's a huge asset. That would be such an asset. I appreciated Ms. Graham's enthusiasm and energy. Mr. Gissendanner, his same energy and enthusiasm, and we had a nice chat about the role of social media. I appreciate in communications and how important that is in connecting with citizens. I just think, did I miss anybody? I want to make sure I didn't miss anybody's.
You got everyone.
Did I get yeah, because everybody is very impressive. But for me, again, it is a bit of a deal breaker for me, the not running again. And so I would say that my top two candidates would be Mr. Jones and Ms. Vittetoe for that reason. Other thoughts? I'm going to start calling on people.
I'll just mention again that those were the two who said they would not run again.
Yes, and that's why, I mean, and it's not just that, it isn't just that piece of it. But again, that's a heavy factor for me. Because I see, I agree, they could all bring something really unique.
Yep.
But I think that those two candidates the experience is there, and the commitment to community is there as well.
And I don't just say, I don't think, I mean, when I say that where I am with the incumbency piece, that's just my opinion. Obviously, I failed miserably at convincing enough of you at the last meeting to agree with me. So I don't think I don't think that has to be the litmus test. I don't think, that's just mine.
Yes.
Of that. And it's just, because I look at this too, like what's that thing? I mean, Barry Bedford has only had a career of service. What he's done for this city and what I think he could do for the city is amazing. Mm-hmm. When Eric spoke, I think an issue we've had as a city is reaching people. Mm-hmm. And to have somebody that has an expertise in communication I think that'd be invaluable. Mackenzie, I really, with you too, when I ran in 2007, I remember I used the demographic age too, because I was 30 when I ran. And I can say this, because we need representation of all facets, and the expertise of public policy of Phuong, and Keith has had a record of service and with the bank and within different humanitarian efforts, and Fay on the you even referenced this in your letter. You said we'd be getting 70 years of experience, but I love that actually, because I think that's also because this is a retirement destination, and I think that we've got to make this an attractive place for retirees to come to. And so there's not a, if Vladimir Putin was out here and said he'd been on council or wasn't going to run, I wouldn't pick him just because he was saying that. So I want you to know that it's not that hard of a litmus test. But for me, I think out of those two, and I will just be honest, between Keith and Fay, well, I guess are you wanting one name? I guess I'm still unclear.
We're going to whittle it down to like 2 or 3, and then we'll talk about from there. That was one of Mike's suggestions.
Okay.
If we could whittle it down to like 2 or 3, and then we'll talk about the 2 or 3.
Well, we've talked about them all already.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's, I guess,
Yeah.
not trying to be difficult. What's the point of whittling down?
Well, just so that we can talk in more granular detail.
I think on Tuesday, we have to have one name
We do, yes.
that we bring for an up or down vote,
Yep,
right?
yes.
So that's what I would like to decide tonight.
Yeah, yes. And you had mentioned you had mentioned to me maybe getting it down so that we
Yeah,
could.
as a starting point.
Yeah, as a starting point, so that's where that.
Okay, I guess it's between, the incumbency between Fay and Keith, I'd probably lean towards Keith, because I think Keith probably has a little more familiarity with the city and what's going on, and would have a smaller learning curve, and could hit the
Yeah.
ground more running. That's just my thought.
I
What are
agree.
other
He's
thoughts?
been on boards, the library board, the, foundation, and also the food pantry
Food
board
pantry.
and so on, that are all somewhat connected with the city of Coralville, so. mhm.
What do you think?
I think that's 3 votes.
Are you, so, okay, so you're solid on Keith?
Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
What about you, Hi?
It is a really hard choice. Just like you said, Mayor, each of these candidates would bring valuable contribution to this council. But I think looking at this council as a whole and what we need to do moving forward until this term is finished and moving on to the next term, I would have to go with someone who, again, have been in service of our community for a long time, because I think that's an asset that we can utilize right now. The not consider running for office immediately also weigh heavily for me, because I know what it takes to run a campaign. And again, they have the opportunity to come back and run, not this coming year, but the year after that. So to skip a term, per se. Enthusiasm-wise, I think all of them have it. But at the end of the day, I think for me, it's whittled down to, again, Mr. Jones and Mrs. Vittetoe. I think the experience that they have in our city will be, will fit really well in this council. And the fact that they do have more time, that is also important, because I know how much work this require. Having a full-time job, sometimes I feel that I don't have enough time to prepare, and it can hinder on, some of the things that I do, and I don't want that, and I feel like that is something that we can, that is an asset to have right now. It's tough.
It is tough.
Yeah.
I think that they are both really, really strong. Even without the not running again, I mean, I think, their experience and service definitely stands out. Any other thoughts, or?
We need a motion, or how do we do this?
I don't think we need a motion.
Okay.
But I do hear consensus for Mr. Jones.
Keith Jones.
Are you okay with that, Mitch?
Yeah. I'd be okay with that. Yep.
What about, Hi, are you okay with that?
Yes, ma'am.
You are, okay, I just wanted to make
Sorry.
sure.
I
wanted
thought
to
you
make
heard me.
sure.
I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So that sounds like,
Yep.
Go
I would
ahead,
just
Lori.
like to say, we have heard some great ideas and thoughts and good initiatives here tonight. And there are openings, I think, on some of our board and commissions.
yeah, yeah.
And also, we will have an election in a little while, and I would like to encourage each one of you to run.
And that person will assume right after the election, right? So the election will be in early November, first Tuesday. What?
Position they run for.
Yeah.
They'll
Right,
have
but
to-
whoever's elected for this position
Oh,
that we're
Right.
appointing.
It doesn't wait till
This
January?
position will end in November, not in the end of December.
Correct.
Okay.
Just so everybody's aware of that. As soon as the
Next
election.
year.
Yeah, in
Next
2023.
year, in 2023.
Yeah, yeah.
Next year, yes. Yeah,
Not
yeah.
this November.
Right,
No.
Yes.
exactly, that's
No,
what
I'm
I
sorry.
want to make
Yes.
I'm sorry.
sure, yes, that people, and that would take effect immediately, right?
The intent would be to have it at the beginning of the meeting, and a swearing in at the meeting on Tuesday night.
Oh, really? Okay.
After the election.
No.
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 I
We're
see.
talking about two
Like
different
June
things.
14th would be this new
Yes.
person's first meeting.
First meeting,
Yes.
yes. that
Okay.
This would be
Yes.
at the beginning of that meeting.
Next Tuesday.
Oh, okay. Okay,
And then that person would serve until November of 2023.
got it. Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
So we do a vote? No.
You will-
Or we have?
no,
No,
You
we
will
vote at
Okay.
the next
You'll
meeting.
vote
Okay,
at the
even though-
14th
and
at the
they
beginning
take-
of the
okay,
meeting.
gotcha.
And then
Yes.
the intent would be the very first item would be that, and the second item would be the swearing in.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's how it was.
I do
yeah.
apologize, I will not be here I'll be out of town for the June 14th meeting.
Okay.
So would you need me to drive
But
back
you
from
know
Des
my
Moines?
intent.
Okay, I can do that.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments as we wrap up, or?
I just want to say thank you to each
Yeah.
and every one of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And please don't feel discouraged. Please put yourself out there. Public service is something that, oftentimes it come thankless. It's a lot of work. I'm not going to lie. You lose a lot of sleep, but it is also very rewarding because you are the voices of the people. And to have that trust, it takes a lot, but it's worth it. So please don't be discouraged. Do put yourself out there on the next round of election. We need people like each and every one of you to stand up, to want to make changes in the community that you live and work in. We count on each and every one of you. And please, help us out in any way that you can. There's a lot of ways to serve your city, not just sitting on this seat. So, from the bottom of my heart, thank you to each and every one of you.
Yes, and I agree. I love that you made that point, that there are so many ways to serve, that this is just one way. And we see, one of the things that is so cool, it's inspiring to see all of you here this evening, but I can tell you that we live in such an incredible community here. Johnson County, Coralville, Iowa City, North Liberty, the whole area is just a really, really special place. And there are so many ways to get involved and so many ways to serve. And I agree. I hope that everyone continues on one path or another to serve.
And hold us accountable. We're here to serve you, and if we don't do our job, please hold us accountable.
Any other comments or thoughts? Okay. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone who came tonight, and thank you for the discussion.
We need a
Meeting
vote?
is adjourned.
A motion?
Oh, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mike just
I
did.
just did.
Mike
All
just
right,
did.
moved, Mike, second.
I'll second.
Okay, seconded by Goodrich. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, we're adjourned.